All right, a six-game slate around the NHL tonight. And here for our opening face-off segment is DraftKings contributor Geoff Ulrich and RotoWire's Paul Bruno. You guys are choosing between the top DFS and sportsbook options on tonight's schedule here, guys. At center, it's an absolutely stacked slate. Matthews, McKinnon, McDavid, Draisaitl, and Scheifele all in action. So Scheifele, the cheapest at $7,200. But which stud center is worth paying up for tonight in your eyes, Geoff?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, this is a situation that I take advantage of with the Oilers centers. Once the gap between McDavid and Draisaitl kind of gets to be around 1K, I just like to take the cheaper guy. And it almost always ends up being Leon Draisaitl, who's the cheaper one. But the Oilers have a good matchup here against Winnipeg. Winnipeg still allows quite a few shots on goal. They got a mediocre kind of power play or penalty kill, They still allow a ton of scoring chances. It's a good matchup for your forwards generally when they're going up against Winnipeg. Draisaitl's got multiple points against the Jets in 5 of 8 games this year as well. And the Oilers have split up McDavid and Draisaitl. So it does kind of give you that edge. I mean, it's not necessarily if one goes off, the other one is also going to, because they're not on the same line anymore. So you could pair Leon Draisaitl with a guy like Nugent Hopkins, go with like a little mini stack there and potentially, get a little bit of leverage on the McDavid owners. I just like Draisaitl mainly because he's cheaper though. Again, another value option you might want to go down to is like a Ryan O'Reilly. But of the studs that we're talking about there, yeah, I definitely like Leon.
Well, what's your approach here with the studs at center?
Did you watch the game on Monday night? There is no choice. It's Conor Mcdavid, guys. You got to go with him because he's clearly at the top of his game. 10 points in his last 3 games. Has absolutely toyed with the Jets all season long, averaging over 2 points a game against them. And I have it on good authority, guys, that Conor Hellebuyck has had a couple of sleepless nights with nightmares about this matchup tonight based on what happened 2 days ago. A 4-pointer. Conor McDavid has the motivation to go off again, guys, because he's now chasing the 100-point mark. That's the new challenge put before him. And the Oilers still believe that they have a slim chance of catching the Leafs for first in the division. And don't forget, he scored that hat trick and goal and assist on Monday in only 16 minutes of ice time against Winnipeg, well short of the season leading average that he has among forwards at 22.5 minutes. So if he goes for the full ride tonight, he'll easily get 4 points, in my opinion.
All right, good stuff, Paul. Well, we'll ask you to shell out like a little less cash, like in the wings and things department here as we look in the 5K range. So you have San Jose's Timo Meier, 5-2, scored 10-plus fantasy points here in 3 straight games. Meanwhile, St. Louis Blues winger Braden Shen has at least 12 fantasy points in each of his last 2 contests. He's going to cost you $100 less. Do either of those guys interest you, or are you looking elsewhere?
Look, I love the idea of shopping in this range because, I already went big at center. And in addition to the guys you mentioned, I also consider Andreas Athanasiou for $4,300 in Los Angeles lineup. He's an uber skilled skater who has 7 points in his last 10 games and is featured on the power play here. He's costing you only $4,300 tonight. And going back to Edmonton, don't forget about a guy like a Jesse Puljujarvi and even Dominic Cahoon if you want to do a full line stack based on McDavid's wingers. Puljujarvi, for his part, has finally started to play to the expectation the Oilers management had of this guy when he was 3rd overall pick in the NHL draft 5 years ago. He's got 6 points over his last 4 games played and only $4,300 tonight. Cahoon, for his part, an underrated offensive piece, guys, but he's only a paltry $2,600 tonight. Plenty of reps in his early career as a top 6 forward, and he scored fairly regularly with those opportunities. So if you're jammed up against the cap, don't forget about a possible full line stack here. If you want to look off the Oilers matchup tonight, take a look at a guy like a Matt Zuccarello, 7 points in his last 10 games played, one of the best playmaking wingers in the whole league, and the Wild have been on fire, humming top to bottom offensively of late. He's priced at only $4,500. And one more flyer that I'll give you, a little bit higher than these guys, Timo Meier, 6 points in his last 10 games played. Power play minutes are his part of his game every night, and he's one of the cheapest core forwards here at $5,200. So there's a lot of good value on the wingers tonight that afford you to go big at the center position.
Okay, what do you do here? What do you do, Geoff Ulrich? Please help us out here with the wings.
So, Paul and I definitely on the same wavelength. Like, there's a lot of good value on the wings. Obviously you want to pay up for guys like McDavid or Draisaitl at center, but I'm obviously we're in a little bit of conflict here as well. I like the Oilers' second line tonight. I do. I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is also a little bit undervalued at $5,800. Typically, Draisaitl and Nugent-Hopkins, once they get together, they will gel. They'll gel at some point. And why I like stacking these two, it's not just the cheapness, but you're going to get them on the power play too. Both these guys play a ton of minutes for the Oilers on the PP1. So, obviously, the McDavid line is fine too. Puljujarvi is great value. He is definitely playing better. You really can't go wrong with both. But again, everyone is going to be flocking to McDavid after the big night. I like for the big field GPPs going with Nugent Hopkins as well, because you can pair him with Draisaitl. But there are a ton of names to talk about here. I agree. Timo Meier would be the target for me there in the low 5K range as well. Arizona allowing, more scoring chances, more shots on goal this year than normal. They've just been a good matchup, but you can even go to the other side of that matchup. San Jose is always a good target for your forwards. A guy like Michael Bunting, just been a pretty consistent point producer as well. So, Paul mentioned a guy like Matt Zuccarello, who again, probably would be my favorite play in the 4K range, we don't need to go about him again, but he is definitely a play you should keep your eye on. So all things considered, winger tonight, you really want to look hard in the 5 and 4K range, because there's a ton of good value there, and it'll let you fit in the big name centers.
Okay, as for the blue line group here, let's try to save even more money. Arizona's Alex Goligoski. All right, hold on a second. Yeah. I knew it, dude. I knew it. I knew what happened to me. Hold on, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Alex Goligoski. Nailed it.
Bingo.
Let's go, boys. Has 13 points in his last 14 games and is playing well over 20 minutes a night. Seeing first power play unit time as well, 3-6. So that seems like some good value here, right? $200 less, though. You can snag another guy. Sees a lot of ice time in Minnesota's Ryan Sutter. So do you like the savings for one of these two bets, or are you looking to pay up on the blue line, Geoff?
Yeah, Goligoski is a guy who plays top line minutes. He's been a good value like most of the season, if we're being honest. He blocks shots a little bit as well. He'll get his shot through, which just, again, it just piles up the cheap DK points. So guy's playing over 24 minutes a night, over his last 10 games as well. Arizona's really just been riding him all year. Again, he's not going to play a ton on the power play, but he'll get some exposure. It's really just more of a volume play, and at 3,600, like whenever he's under 4K, he is a good value. I'd prefer him to Sutter for sure. Sutter is a guy who has still can break through for a few big games, but Goligoski, you just know what you're getting. He's playing big minutes. He's got a good matchup. Defense is a little bit weird tonight. I mean, other than Jacob Chychrun, like the rest of the players don't really have a great matchup. I'm fine paying up for Chychrun again, quite frankly. This guy leads the league in goal scoring in terms of defense, but he's just got great upside coming off a 43.9 fantasy night as well. I think the guy who's really undervalued, though, among the top players is Tyson Berry. Again, another player you can just stack. Regardless of who you like in the forwards, you can easily pair Tyson Berry with them from the Oilers, because he's going to be out there for a lot of the power play as well. And at 5,400, I believe this is his lowest price point of his last 10 games, which, again, let's take advantage here in a pretty good matchup against the Jets.
Dude, love me some Goligoski. What about you, Paul?
I was already looking at the names you mentioned before we referenced this section of the show today. I always already talk about these guys on the RotoWire pod that I host with co-host AJ Scholes every Tuesday, if I can get a quick plug in. We've been touting Goligoski as a guy who's recently started to pile up the points like he's done in recent years. He started the year very slowly and likely fell out of favor in DFS circles earlier on, but he's a great option right now. And I like Suter for the same reasons. He's been on the IR for a while as well. He's back up to his normal rate of ice time, which is among the tops in the league, and we know about his offensive skill set. And I already mentioned the fact that the Wild is on offense is ranking among the best in the league over the past month. But if you're looking for a cheaper D-man on the board tonight, I really like the situation for Toronto's Rasmus Sandin, as he's priced in at only $2,500. He's getting looks now on the club's power play, which has been really struggling and just starting to look like it did earlier in the season. And if it goes like it can tonight against Montreal, he could really be a great value in your winner's circle edition of your lineups tonight. In addition, though, we already went cheap on the wings, and if you can fit him in, I like Cale Makar if you want to pay a little bit more tonight. $5,800 his price tag. He was another guy that was a slow start of the season with some injury issues, but is rapidly rising among defensive scoring leaders with 12 points in his last 10 games. And don't overlook him if you can fit him in tonight's lineup.